I always like to say, as a registered dietitian, I had to put my hand on my diploma and say, breakfast is the most important meal of the day in order to, walk across the stage. So, to be a dietitian in this space and seeing intermittent fasting as a powerful tool is, not the norm. And it really took my understanding and research of intermittent fasting, time restricted eating, as well as implementing it with myself and a handful of patients to see the power of this type of nutritional strategy. So I'll tell you the reason why. Well, I might have mentioned this a little earlier when I was talking about fasting research, but the reason why intermittent fasting is so popular right now is because in 2016, the Nobel Peace Prize was won due to the discovery of autophagy. Autophagy is a very powerful process in the body where at digestive rest, the body's able to seek out dead, damaged, dysfunctional cells and get rid of them. So it's kind of like the fountain of youth from the inside out. Up until that point, we were told that not eating does more harm than good. So this was really the first time that someone was able to demonstrate that there is actual benefit in the time between when we finish dinner and we break our fast, breakfast. And it's very powerful. And we're now seeing a lot of research come out about the power of intermittent fasting because of this discovery. And one of the interesting things to look at is that prior to 1977, which was the development of the first nutritional guidelines, as well as the recommendation of 6 small meals a day, our obesity rate was completely flat. From 1977 on, our obesity rate has skyrocketed. So we can correlate a low fat, low calorie diet, 6 small meals a day, the recommendations of the food guide pyramid with, increasing obesity in the United States. Because prior to that, our meal patterns were breakfast at 8, lunch at noon, dinner at 5:30. So by default, we have been fasting for 12 to 14 hours most nights. We just didn't call it that. Okay. Then this whole 6 small meals a day came about, and now we're eating from 6 in the morning till 11 at night. So now we're fasting for, maybe 6 hours a night, 8 hours a night. So it's really potentially this loss of autophagy that has also contributed to our obesity rates and high levels of comorbid conditions like diabetes and hypertension and things like that. So that's why fasting is so popular right now. I believe that everyone should be aiming to fast for at least 12 hours a day. Some people would probably call that time restricted eating, more so a smaller fast. But there is benefits to fasting, longer. I use a 16-8 approach with my clients where we fast for 16 hours and we eat within an 8-hour eating window. And there's a lot of reasons why that can actually accelerate fat metabolism. It takes about 12 to 14 hours for your body to digest your last meal. So really in those last 2 to 3 hours when our glucose is gone, our insulin levels are super low. Insulin is the number one fat storing hormone in the body, and our glycogen stores are beginning to be depleted. The body is forced to tap into our fat stores a little bit more in order to provide energy. So you kind of get a
So
little
on
bit
that
of
one,
that.
can I
Yeah,
just
go
jump
ahead.
in for a second then? So one of the things that I've been trying to figure out, and I've read conflicting information about this, is that a true fast is where some people do it overnight, which is how I was doing it, or the majority of overnight. That it should the bulk of it should be done when you're actually in waking hours. Have you heard or read, or do you have an opinion on the sort of best time to do that fasting? Should it be when you're up and you actually, because I find it a lot harder to do when during the day than I do if a big portion of it is overnight.
No, I think that when we look at, again, our patterns of eating for most of our existence, we adopted a circadian rhythm fasting. And I think that that is the best way to implement fasting, which is where you eat when the sun rises and you stop when the sun goes down. So for most people, if you were eating in that nature, it would mean that you would have breakfast maybe like around 7 or 8. but you would wrap up dinner potentially around 5 or 6. So you tend to end your fast a lot earlier at night. And I know myself included, with busy children and soccer, sports schedules and things like that, finishing my eating window at 5 or 6 is very challenging. So
Mm.
I typically will find myself finishing mine closer to, 8 p.m. So I definitely
Does
think
that,
that,
is there a problem with that though? So like, because that's where I am. I have the same challenge, and so I start to eat later, around about 12 or 1, when
yeah.
I have my first sort of, I break that fast, and then I kind of finish around about sort of 8:30ish in the evening. Is that a problem
No, I
there?
think that is, that's the nice thing about fasting. There's no one right way to do it. I mean, you can research and look at all the different variables, but for me, I think that is the most sustainable and realistic way to implement it. Skip breakfast, break your fast between 10 and 12, maybe have a snack or two, eat dinner, 6, 7, wrap it up by 8.
Mm.
And
And
you have
when
to remember
you
that, while we're sleeping, that's when like the magic's happening. That's when the recovery is happening. That's when, we can burn more fat at night. That's a really powerful time. So, in my opinion, it's best to be fasting, throughout the night.
Mm. And when you start the next day, then, like, what's the definition of you still being on a fast? So one of the things I've done, I kind of come off slowly to extend it, and then I watch you did a really cool video about Bulletproof coffee, which I thought was pretty good. And so what I've done, and it may sort of relating to your point, was that I'll have a sort of a coffee with butter. I didn't do it in the same way as you do. Yours looked a lot more tasty than mine, and I'm going to try that. But I have a coffee and butter around about sort of 11 or 12, which kind of allows me a little bit longer before I have that first meal. And I just sort of feel better, energy feels good. I still have my meals, but in your video, you seem to indicate that having a bulletproof coffee didn't technically break the fast. Is that correct?
Yes, we call it fat fasting. So you can kind of like Google that term to have a better understanding about it. But, and again, there are different people who look at fasting in different ways. Purists would not agree with, putting butter or MCT oil in your coffee in terms of being in a fasted state. They say all you get is water, black coffee, herbal tea with nothing in it. But the whole issue is that it really comes down, especially when we talk about weight loss, fasting and weight loss. It's all about that insulin response. And we know that fat, butter has 0 carbs, 0 protein. So there's 0 insulin response. There's 0 blood sugar, elevation. I've actually worn a CGM, which is a continuous glucose monitor. And when I drink my Bulletproof coffee, my blood sugar actually drops. It goes lower when you use quality butter in combination with blended MCT oil. The research shows that it actually increases your production of ketones. Ketones are really powerful for fat metabolism. And many people that have tried to go on a keto diet to elicit ketosis know that for many it takes 2 to 3 days of extreme low carb eating, high fat eating to get into ketosis. So anything that has the ability to generate ketones, even in the presence of carbohydrates, can be a powerful tick for metabolism. And then, kind of what you said, some people struggle with energy, brain fog, in that fasted state during the morning, and providing, again, quality butter, quality coffee with even MCT oil, which is like rocket fuel for the brain. It really kind of takes that away. It takes the edge off completely. So I don't drink Bulletproof coffee every morning. I don't fat fast every morning, but this morning I did. So it's definitely something in my arsenal that I use to support fasting.
And with that coffee, so I do it with a small coffee. I'm not a big coffee drinker. I kind of have like a double espresso, and I put some in and mix it up, and that seems to do the trick. But is there any sort of rules in terms of the outside of what you should put in it, which I'd recommend you check out your video, but is there anything in terms of the sort of frequency? Should you just do it first thing in the morning as you're starting to break the fast, because it will kind of give you a little bit longer, a bit of an energy boost? Should you do it during the day? What have you found is a sort of a good rule of thumb?
So I have a love-hate relationship with the Bulletproof coffee. I love it for all the reasons we've talked about. Again, it can help prolong your fast. It can make you feel really good during a fasted state, but it is also very calorically dense. So, if you're using, a half a tablespoon to a tablespoon of butter with a half a tablespoon to a tablespoon of MCT oil, that's anywhere from 150 to 250 calories. So what I have found sometimes is that, because it is very delicious, is that sometimes people will kind of abuse it. And at the end of the day, calories are king. So that will matter. And so I think you want to be, conscious of, what your day entails with regards to your calories and macronutrients and how that actually fits in to the rest of the food that you're eating. So it's not something that I would do multiple times a day. It's really only something I would personally use to help support a fast. Beyond that, I'd probably stick to black coffee or a splash of cream.
Right. Is there any risks or dangers around doing, let's say, this time restricted eating for an ongoing basis, or would you recommend that you break that up so you do it for either in the week and don't do it in the weekends, or you do it for a month and then you come off it, or does it not matter because there's no negative consequences to it?
I think when you're talking about, conservative fasting, like 12 to 16 hours, absolutely, it can be done daily. It always makes me laugh because there's so many people that always skip breakfast. I mean, it's a very common meal for people to skip. But now once we put a label on it, oh, I'm intermittent fasting, now a lot of people have a lot to say about it. So that conservative fasting, 12 to 16 hours, I think you will benefit from. There's no kind of like adaptation to it. People say, oh, I've adapted to it, it's not working now. It doesn't work like that. And it can be done every single day. I think fasting beyond that, there's, so many different protocols. Some people do one meal a day, which is where you fast for basically like 23 hours and you eat 1 hour a day. Some people will do alternating, 24-hour fast. So they fast for 24 hours and then they eat normal and they fast for 24 hours. There's also like a 5-2 approach where you eat normal for 5 days and you uberly restrict your calories for 2. I think some of those more, extreme and advanced fasting approaches are ones that you want to kind of cycle in and out of. I'm not a huge fan of like the one meal a day because I think protein optimization is really important, and you can't consume all your protein in one meal and your body like be, functioning and elevating at its best form. I think spacing your protein out within an 8-hour eating window is kind of really important.
Yeah, I found the around about 15 works quite well to me. And I went through phases, and I've spoke to people about it. Sometimes people say, oh, they can't live without breakfast. And I used to be like that. As soon as I woke up, I'd be hungry. And I've tried this a few times, and it seems as though you start to adapt, and you don't wake up hungry. In fact, the last thing you want to do is put too much food into you. So I've found that I've kind of my sort of taste and when I want to eat has changed a little bit, and it actually fits quite well into my lifestyle as well, which I think is quite a bonus if it's not uncomfortable for you to maintain it over a period of time. One of the things though that I was unsure of is when you then break. So let's assume that the coffee isn't breaking the fast. What is a good thing to start with? Whether it's I make a kind of a protein shake with some nuts and protein and a few other things in it. Have you got any things that are good to break when you formally consume some food?
Yeah, I want to just go back real quick about what you're mentioning, people that feel like they have to eat breakfast first thing in the morning. A lot of people fail with intermittent fasting because they don't support their fast adequately enough. I am a huge proponent of electrolytes. I think most people are lacking in appropriate electrolyte balance, sodium, potassium, magnesium. So I found that people that support their fast while they're fasting with electrolyte products, whether it be electrolyte add-ins, electrolyte waters, even just like a little pinch of salt, you feel so much better. So
Mm.
that's just a quick tip. You can find that in my free fasting guide. But in terms of what's the best way to break your fast, I don't think that there's necessarily like one perfect way to break your fast, but I do think that it's important that every meal is well balanced. I think every meal needs to have a good source of protein, a good source of fat, and at least a little bit of carbohydrates. Fat, protein, and fiber are the foods that fill you up and keep you full. They take 4 to 5 hours to digest. So they take you through to your next meal. Whereas high carbohydrate and sugar foods only fill you up and keep you full for about an hour. So you're full and then you're hungry again. So it creates kind of this vicious cycle. So a lot of times when you do I mean, I know when I get to lunch and I fasted all morning, I'm hungry. So if I am in a rush and I grab, I don't know, something really high carb, like some popcorn or bagel or something, it's going to backfire and I'm going to struggle with my food choices for the rest of the time. But, if I always make sure that I have, 3 to 4 ounces of protein with some healthy fats and a ton of vegetables with fiber, then I'm much more satisfied. I think the other issue with hunger that's really important that most people are missing out on is the speed in which we eat. Number one, we're not chewing our food enough, and we're not slowing down. So we're not allowing the signals in our stomach time to actually tell our brain that we're full. So I think another really big suggestion with regards to breaking your fast, because again, you can feel very hungry and therefore eat very quickly, is to be conscious about slowing down and try to chew your food 10 to 20 times, while you're eating.